All right, so hello everyone and welcome to PAEA's Region 1 sponsored event, COVID and Clay. My name is Leah Shuck, and with Linda Abraham Braff, we represent Region 1 of the Pennsylvania Art Education Association, which includes Allegheny, Westmoreland, Washington, Greene, and Fayette counties here in PA. Before we begin the panel discussion this evening, we are asking participants to mute their microphones during the presentation. We will also be recording this event so that we will be able to share it out on the PAEA website. So for those of you that weren't here at the beginning, one of our PAEA colleagues explained that if you have your camera off during the presentation, then just the cameras of the panelists will be viewable in the recording. So we're gonna have it that way. If you're not sure where those controls are, they're located in the bottom left corner of the controls bar. We are also asking that you sign in for attendance purposes. That way you can obtain your professional development credits. All you have to do that is put the name that you use to register for this event in the chat. The chat role can also be found at the bottom of your controls bar. Signing in will ensure that you receive Act 48 credit for Pennsylvania professional development credits. You can also use the chat role for questions during the presentation. If time allows, we will try to address as many additional questions at the end of this event as we can. Non-PA teachers, you will be receiving an email to obtain a participation certificate after the event is over. So the mission for this event basically was around concerns that have been raised regarding the health and safety of the ceramics classroom during the coronavirus pandemic. Linda and I discussed this earlier on in the summer, and we decided to assemble a panel of local experts to help facilitate a discussion around best practices. Our panel will not only be answering questions to the best of their ability submitted by our membership, but also sharing their experience and go-to resources. We just ask that you please understand that while there are general guidelines out there about school reopening and safety, our panelists are providing their expertise just to the best of their understanding. So just use your best judgment whenever you decide to apply this information into your own classroom. So since we are dealing with a novel virus, it can be incredibly frustrating with how vague the guidelines are. So that is why it is important to talk with your colleagues to determine what your best course of action is moving forward within the field that we all work in. But the good news is that our art educators are notoriously resourceful and resilient, and also very creative. So with our excellent problem solving skills, hopefully we'll all be able to get a better handle on our plans for going back to school after our discussion today. I like to put this graphic in because it is a testament to just how vague the guidelines are that have been provided by the CDC.
Okay, our panelists, I'd like to introduce our panelists to everybody. We have Christy Cupp, who's the owner of Christy Cupp Ceramics and is an art teacher at Deer Lakes High School. Christy has been an art educator at Deer Lakes for 23 years. As I said before, she's the owner and operator of Christy Cupp Ceramics since 2007. When not teaching, she can be found in her studio in Butler making functional pottery or out in her berry fields picking berries. Thank you for being with us. Bryce Hemington is a ceramic artist with over 10 years of experience working in the arts. After receiving a BFA from Edinburgh University and teaching certification from Carleton University, he has gone on to be a master's candidate at Indiana University of Pennsylvania with a concentration in ceramics. He was a resident artist at Touchstone Center for the Crafts in 2014 and exhibited his thesis exhibition in 2014. His work primarily focuses on wood firing, I can't even talk today, ceramics made on the pottery's wheel. He is currently working at Manchester's Craftsman's Guild. Thank you, Bryce. Julie Redovic is is a technical director at Standard Ceramic Supply Company in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She has over 30 years of industry expertise. In 1986, she's a graduate of Edinburgh University in northeastern Pennsylvania. She earned her BFA in ceramics and began her work as a potter. She took on a part-time position at Standard, which quickly grew into a full-time employment. Her experience includes the testing of clay and glazes, technical customer support, and quality control. Over her tenure, she has developed many clay bodies and glazes, which are a part of Standard's offerings. Her excellent knowledge of product production makes her an essential resource for both customers and staff at Standard. She has worked personally with many potters, listening to their needs, researching solutions, and guiding them to products that meet their specifications. Thank you, Jolie, for being with us.
So we gave PAEA members the chance to submit questions in advance that they would like to have addressed during tonight's presentation. And once we saw how popular this event became when we put it out on Eventbrite, we decided to also extend that opportunity to submit questions in advance from the first 100 registrants. The questions submitted have been organized into 3 categories that include health and safety, distance learning, and logistics. So our first category is health and safety. This is where most of our questions came from. The first question that was submitted, it was actually submitted multiple times, was, is communal clay okay? A lot of people are saying that they don't have the storage space for students to be given individual bags of clay.
I don't believe that the communal clay is going to work in these times. It would be better if they could each student could have an allotted amount of clay in maybe a baggie, or if they had, the teacher would distribute the amount of clay each student would use per day. So that's my recommendation as far as, you know, having communal clay. Throwing it back in with your scraps, that's another problem. That is gonna, I think that's another question, but in that area, they're gonna have to have their scraps in a certain container and keep that contained and stored for, you know, a period of time. Hopefully about 14 days would be ideal for that. That's my suggestion as far as communal clay goes.
We had talked about giving the students their own small individual bins, and I know that doesn't address the storage space limitations, but something that I started doing was collecting those plastic boxes that have spinach and lettuces in them, and those are good until the kids crack them. But if you keep a little bit of water in there, it'll keep that clay contained, and you can put some tools and things in as well. And that keeps, the kids can keep all their clay and their project all in one very affordable container if you can start collecting them now.
Yeah, we made, for my work, we ended up making these really extensive bins that were, they had all the tools, all the clay, everything in them. But they priced out way too expensive. So I think like finding a cheaper alternative, something you can get for free either from their parents or from like source somewhere else would be a great alternative to storing clay. Nice.
Okay, next question. Another question that was submitted was, how do I sanitize canvas covered tables?
When I looked at the CDC guidelines, they recommend absolutely no soft surfaces, and canvas would be considered a soft absorbable surface. Now I know a lot of you can't get rid of your canvas, but there's really, I just don't think you can sanitize it. And I don't know if you could buy that plastic picnic table covering to cover it over, because that would just wipe off and it could be sanitized.
Or like painter's plastic.
Yeah.
You can get it in really affordable, big quantities. So you'd be able to replace it if need be. And then I had mentioned in the notes that we were talking about Hardy Backer. Hardy Backer is a concrete board that's used in bathrooms. It's moisture absorbent. It's unlike drywall. It's a concrete material. And I recommend you can use that and cut it up. You can actually score it with a utility knife break it on an edge. And it's a really nice surface to work with, but the nice thing about it is you could make them small enough that you could individually give kids small building boards to work on so that they're not touching or moving areas. They're more sort of individually focused. You can get them as like 3 foot by 5 foot pieces. So that's, I think, a nice Tyvek could maybe work. I've never worked with it before.
I did throw the, sorry, go ahead, Julie.
It wasn't me.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna say, I threw the link for the Hardy Backer boards in the chat.
Okay. You can buy rolls of Tyvek and you can get giant rolls of them. I'm not sure how much they are, but it's a very durable material. Like it doesn't, you can't tear that stuff. So you could easily cut that and have that as a work surface. The problem is you need something underneath it to support it, but it would work. Oh, $45 at Home Depot. Thank you, Amanda.
And you are right. If it does break down and break into the clay, that will cause a problem. It should be pretty resilient, the Hardy Backer. I know for our purposes, we have used a circular saw with a drywall blade on it, which cuts it, and then it doesn't chip or break. But definitely, you'd want to make sure that things are not breaking down and getting into your clay.
Correct.
Yeah, so as Christy mentioned, the CDC does say that the coronavirus will eventually die on surfaces from hours to days, but again, that's a very vague time frame. So normal routine cleaning with soap and water removes germs and dirt from surfaces. It lowers the risk of spreading COVID. You could also consider what items can be moved or removed completely to reduce frequent handling or contact from people. Soft and cold surfaces such as rug seating may be removed or stored to reduce challenges with cleaning and disinfecting. So I pulled that quote from the CDC website specifically because, you know, canvas covered tables would be a soft porous surface. So just for this year, you know, I took mine off of my tables at my school. The next question is, I have a reclaim bin and a pug mill. Should I still be requiring or allowing students to help recycle clay? This question was submitted to us in different forms, multiple ways as well.
So I mentioned the reclaim bin before, and how it should be stored. The reclaim should be stored if possible for a period of time. As far as requiring and allowing all students to use the pug mill, that would be no. It should be the teacher who's repugging all of the material, bagging it up, and then sealing that clay for a period of time. I think Christy or Bryce was talking about her reclaim or his reclaim and the amount they had. So maybe they can address, you know, how much they have per day, because I'm not real familiar with that, but certainly one person should only be operating the pug mill and the clay at a time.
Yeah, in the past, I've had teams of kids do it. In the past, because our projects were big and we were very liberal with clay use, we were generating probably 50 pounds of reclaim a day at times at the beginnings of projects. So, you know, it would be something that would need to be done at least on a weekly basis, if not every other day, just to keep up with it. But Julie, if you're saying that we shouldn't be letting any kids near it, then that's what we'll go for. You know, the less hands in the clay, the better, right?
I agree. Yes.
Yeah.
And, you know, I did want to let everybody know too, I'm sure you've seen it, Amico did release a statement that says, we recommend that teachers not recycle clay during this time. If you choose to, please take extra precautions. But then I found another clay company, Bracker's Good Earth Clay out of Kansas, that said, you know, in regards to recycling, that you could wear nitrile gloves to open a bag of clay and cut blocks of clay off to issue to each student, enough for that period only, and that any scraps of theirs should be placed in a bucket with the date last added written on a piece of masking tape to close the lid and leave it untouched for 2 weeks to a month. And that's from Bracker's Good Earth Clay. And I'll have all the links for these resources at the end that you all have available to you.
It's amazing how much has changed since we talked.
Yes, that is
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, so I added in these resources after we had our initial meeting. So
Yeah.
it's really amazing to see how this has evolved really a lot.
Quickly.
Not enough though.
Very fluid.
Yeah, definitely not enough, Leah.
So the next question is, how long does recycled clay need to sit before it is safe for students to use?
Well, I think we decided the safe side was 14 days when we had our first meeting. I'm sure things have changed, but I would say recycled 2 weeks to a month, the longer the better. Like Christy said, if you can limit the amount of reclaim you have, as you know, by what project you do throughout the school year, that would be definitely helpful. Smaller scale projects maybe that, or things that don't involve a lot of free being made from those projects would definitely be helpful, considering you probably have a limited space to put all your reclaim. Or, you know, you can throw it out if you can, but obviously most of you don't want to recycle it. So the best thing would be the longer you can wait to use it again, the better.
Great, thank you. The next question is, should we require students to wear gloves? So the only thing that I could find specifically on the use of gloves was from Amico. Again, it said, since ceramic materials are water-based, the best option for clean tools, equipment, and surfaces will be soap and water, just like your hands, and you can follow up with disinfectants for extra measures if you desire. So there really isn't anything specifically about gloves out there. Also, the CDC, you know, they don't really talk about gloves so much as they do talk about proper hand washing and hygiene.
Yeah.
And I think
know,
we said something about that earlier, that it's better that they wash their hands before using it, wash their hands when after they're using it. That way, you know, they can protect themselves that way instead of putting on gloves, taking them off, putting them somewhere. Go ahead, Bryce. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good. I was going to say, and in terms of like a functional thing, in terms of working with clay too, gloves tend to be more of a problem than a solution. But yeah, as far as the CDC is saying, they definitely haven't been saying anything about gloves. I saw a question in the chat about aprons. Boy, I wouldn't have them share aprons. I would say, unless they're bringing an apron from home that they use that's just theirs, I would say share as few things as possible.
Yeah, we used to have students share aprons, and this year what we're going to do instead is we're going to ask them to bring in an oversized t-shirt, and we're going to have them just keep that in their shelf storage area with their project.
Yeah.
They'll just have to wash it on their own like they would with their gym clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Which never happens.
Hey, not my dirty t-shirt, not my problem.
Hygiene?
So the next question is, I read online that you can put vinegar or Clorox in clay to sanitize it. Is that true?
Well, we don't suggest adding any Clorox or any type of disinfectant or vinegar in your clay. I know that people wondered if they could sanitize the clay. They can sanitize the pug mill and the containers and the plastic items that they're storing things in, but we do not suggest them adding any type of disinfectant into the clay. No.
Yeah.
What would that do to the clay body, Julie?
Well, vinegar actually would age it faster, but if you put too much in or let it sit too long, you can have problems with issues in the firing and it possibly dunting the clay and things like that. So, you know, Clorox, even though it's a small amount that you would be adding, you're still firing it. And, you know, you're in an enclosed area with students, and I just don't think that that would be a very good situation.
I imagine the amount of Clorox you would need to actually sanitize the clay would actually add quite a bit of soluble salt to it.
Right. And that's as we
It's a
know,
whole nother.
yeah.
Yeah. And also too, we had talked about the fact that like if you've got a bucket of reclaim, it's all water on the top, and then it's just mostly a lot of very densely packed clay. So even if you think that you're going to do it anyhow and you pour the Clorox in, it's only going to go so far into that. It's not going to get to any of the clay underneath it, because clay is just, it's its own barrier.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not, that's just not going to work the way we would hope and dream that it would.
Right. So similarly to that question, someone asked, I read that you can put sanitizer in glaze. Is that true?
No.
No. So AMACO's recommendation is to portion out glazes into smaller containers for student use and either store with plastic or to return the small amount back into the jar at the end of the class period. And again, that's right from the AMACO website. The next question is, should we allow students to share tools? If so, what are some safe options? So some people talked about using a sanitizer bath at the end of each class that they could plop the tools into to be able to pull out for the next time they need to be used. And then Christy, you also had some good ideas about making homemade tools out of materials that can be commonly found around the house, the art room, the medicine cabinet. So I don't know if you wanted to talk any more about that.
And thank you for pulling up those pictures. We have one of the resources at the end, and some of the lesson suggestions are to teach your kids how to make tools. That way that becomes one of their very specific projects. It keeps them out of clay for a little bit, you know, because I'm trying to stagger my clay use, but it teaches them problem solving. Those tools then become their own, and then you don't necessarily have to worry about sharing tools, which I'm trying to avoid at all costs.
And if you want to like give them an opportunity, like one of the things we've done in the past is we've given kids the opportunity to spray paint their tools so that they're color coded. So if you can get different colors so that people have a little bit of ownership to be like, oh, mine are gold tools, you know, or something like that.
I like that.
So just a few more resources that I pulled from some research. According to the Ohio Alliance for Art Education, when possible, teachers should develop simple hand building lessons that require no shared supplies or the use of disposable supplies or tools when possible, such as plastic spoons, craft sticks, or straws. And according to our document, the PA art phased reopening, it says prompt students to wash or sanitize their hands at the beginning and end of each class. If you are thinking that this could take the place of sanitizing tools, though, the answer is no, because the document does go on to say to sanitize tools after each use. So, you know, the frustrating part, I guess, is that we are going to have to make changes, right? Our lessons might look different this year. Our projects might be smaller this year. But, you know, NAEA, the National Art Education Association, in their document suggests for art teachers to just be prepared and to be flexible, because many material-rich lessons may need to be modified for this year. And we know that ceramics and clay is a very material-rich subject matter.
And if you know, like, I think I was the one who brought up the sanitizer bath. So like if you've ever worked in a kitchen before, right? They have the wash station, the rinse station, the sanitize station, all as part of a sink. I was thinking about something where you could put a sanitizer in there so that after the kids have done washing the clay off the tools, they could then dip them into a sanitizer and then put it down or leave it in the sanitizing bath. Of course, wreaks havoc on wood, but better that than wreaking havoc on your students.
Right. And then Bryce, you did mention that there's a safe sanitizer that Manchester Craftsmen's Guild provides to you, and it is safe for student use.
Yes, but I think what we sort of landed on was that you have to sort of go with whatever your school has. The school cafeteria would have one of these baths, so whatever they're using for their supplies, I would say that's what I would sort of start sourcing from is whatever sanitizers they're using, sanitize with that.
So if you're an art teacher and you wanted to investigate this sanitizer bath thing, would you recommend, instead of teachers doing a whole bunch of research, that they should just ask like a maintenance person, or who would you suggest they reach out to?
Yeah, I mean, I would talk to maintenance, talk to food prep, talk to the people that are working with those materials and see what you can source.
Okay.
But maybe someone who's because my situation's not quite school centric. Is that something that's doable within the schools?
Yeah, I would just ask our our maintenance head at our school to tell me what the approved cleaner is. So.
Nice.
The next question was, is anyone planning on having their students buy their own tools? If so, how will you store them?
I know on my end that we are supplying all the tools, which is not inconsequential. But I have come across a few students that have told me that for their public schools that they're having them buy tools. We're just directing them to any of the sites where you can buy it. So either, if it's locally through Standard site or through their shop, or through Blick or any of those places. Even Amazon is very accessible. Clay King, anything like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna drop the link for the Standard toolkit in the chat. That's what I'm going to offer my students. If they choose to purchase a toolkit, they can, but I'm not going to require that they do that.
Yeah.
So we do have 2 types of toolkits that they can view on our website at ceramicsupplypittsburgh.com. There's an online store, and they can order it and get it shipped or pick it up if they're local, or separate tools if they're not interested in all the tools in those packs. We certainly have a large variety of individual tools that they can get and view on that site.
That's where we're sourcing all ours from, is through Standard.
And then Christy, didn't you say that you're going to try a lab fee this year?
Well, I'm going to try the lab fee, but as of today, I still don't know what, how, or when I'm teaching. So I'm not sure, but my district is requiring that I charge a lab fee to make up for some budget shortfalls. So my principal and I had discussed using that lab fee to cover the cost of student tools, but we haven't gotten to that point yet. So I'll let you know how that goes.
And then according to the NAEA document that I referenced earlier, they did explicitly say individual student kits may best serve students for this year. But some people just can't do that,
Yeah.
The next question is, how will I do demonstrations on the wheel while social distancing? My room is so small.
So depending on the size of your room, I would give some serious thought to whether or not you actually want to do the wheel. They take up an awful lot of space. I know I've seen some people putting up plexiglass walls in between the wheels. It seems like a kind of crazy solution though. But one of the things I've been doing, because I've been on remote teaching since the spring, is I've been having 2 cameras set up. So there's this camera here, and then I don't know if anyone can see it, but there's also a camera that's in the Zoom meeting called Bryce 2 that has a top-down view that I've been doing, and I'll show you the setup for that, which is I have a piece of wood, piece of thing, and a cardboard stand for my phone.
Nice.
Just something so that when I'm working, students are able to see what I'm doing from multiple angles, because I think it's something that really gets lost when we're doing remote work.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's a
That's great.
cardboard contraption,
Cardboard.
and it's cardboard, PVC pipe, and a piece of plywood,
Mm-hmm.
and some pipe connectors.
Yeah.
So that saves you from having to buy a document camera.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I have a document camera, but it works. It's a little bit iffy. I find that the phone tends to work a little bit better, but I have a Promethean board, so I can project onto the board whatever I'm doing. But just a note on wheel throwing. Right now, I really just think I'm not going to be teaching it because I don't know about all of you, but I'm hands-on, and I just have a real hard time teaching kids without physically pushing on their hands. So until I come up with something else, I probably won't be teaching, at least beginning. If I have a group of kids that, you know, already have some skills and it's a small setup, I may do it. But again, those wheels are so close together. It just, yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are not doing wheels this year as well, just to make more space for tables to allow students to social distance.
Yeah.
I saw in the chat people were talking about tools doing old key cards from motels. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Um,
And then just to, you know, circle back to the question itself, again, one of the sources I like to cite is the PAEA Arts Phased Reopening document, and it explicitly states, do not gather students for group discussions or demonstrations, use technology to project demonstrations. So, you know, we're lucky that we have Bryce, that, you know, he put together a more affordable solution to do that. The next question is about wheel throwing again. What is the best way to teach wheel throwing safely? What is the best way to sanitize wheels between classes?
I don't know. If you know the magic words to make kids know how to center, please tell us.
Wow, that would be great.
Grace?
Yes, in terms of, I mean, like, honestly, I think it's just going to be like, if you are doing it, being really descriptive and, you know, with your demonstration, and just you have to be really verbal and, you know, make sure that you're being encouraging for students. And then I think on the other side, in terms of cleaning, it'll be like having the students wash the wheel all the way and then spray the wheels off with sanitizer, and then you have to let that sanitizer dry. So maybe spacing out between classes, you know, so that you don't have people overlapping from one wheel to the next.
Yeah, and Bryce, I'm going to piggyback on that because I just read that this week, and I don't know how I missed it, but when it comes to sanitizing, if the surface is not dry, like the sanitizer has, if it is not dried, it's not considered sanitized, which may be a nightmare for some of us to try and get those tables dried. And we're not allowed to run fans in a room either. So, because if you run a fan, Leah, I see your face.
I do run a fan.
Yeah, you're not, see, CDC and Allegheny Health Network specifically, well, I don't know about the CDC. Allegheny Health Network specifically said no fans in classrooms because what it's doing is it's taking the stale air, contaminated air, and it is recirculating it.
Wow. Christy, could you, I mean, after this, could you email me the link for that Allegheny Health Network information so that I can put it in this presentation in case people need to see that?
So I don't know where, like my superintendent mailed me a webinar that was not necessarily for teachers, but she sent it out to everybody. And it was from Allegheny Health Network. And it was a big discussion about COVID and cleaning. And they were saying that the only air that should be promoted in rooms is fresh air conditioning, because it's pulling fresh air into the room and that your doors should be open.
Wow.
Yeah, my mouth dropped just like yours when I heard that. It's like, oh, okay. So yeah, it's yeah, doors open, definitely.
Yeah, doors, windows, anything you can do.
Yeah.
While the weather permits.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Well, I was just scrolling through the chat. I apologize, I hadn't been keeping up with it the whole time. Somebody had dropped in the chat about doing a diluted bleach solution for sanitizing tools or wheels. There are appropriate ratios to do that, but most public school districts will not allow you to use bleach in your schools. Typically, the only cleaners they want in the schools are the cleaners that have been approved by their district facilities department. So
yeah, and also, even if you are permitted to use bleach, bleach solutions are only good for 24 hours, so you have to mix them up new every day.
okay, so I'm glad that we talked about that because I did see some
I
people
did not know that.
talking about bleach.
Hey, Bryce, the things I have learned in the last 14 days.
Man,
Because
You're
I mixed up
preparing.
a gallon of bleach solution thinking I was good for a month, and I was like, nope, you're not.
Wow, wow.
you just need to keep that bottle of Everclear close.
I would get in more trouble for that than Cora.
But it's so much more fun.
So the next question is, can we still use slip and or share slip? That was a good
Well,
question. I didn't even think of that.
You could
I
use
would not.
slip. I mean, but if you'd have to give them individual bottles like Amico was saying with their glazes, but a communal slip bucket where you just put your brushes in is not acceptable, I don't think, at this time.
Mhm.
If you
Yeah,
don't
we-
already know about it, serrated metal ribs. They're dirt cheap. Well, they're not dirt cheap, but they're cheap.
They're cheap.
And you can generate slip by just using a little bit of water, scratching it, adding a little bit of water, scratch it again, and you'll generate plenty of slip to do any of your attachments. And in my opinion, it makes better attachments anyway.
If you can do that.
Well, you could use toothbrushes, but those need to be sanitized as well.
Okay, the next question is, how can I social distance at the end of class when everybody needs to clean up at the same time? I swear, when someone submitted that question, my mind started spinning. I was like, oh no, that's true. How are we gonna do that?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that if you're the type of person that is good with organizational skills, is rotate every table. One table cleans up super early, on Mondays, table 1 cleans up. On Tuesday, table 3 cleans up. Rotate who gets the short end of the stick. I've just come to the conclusion and acceptance that classes are going to be much shorter this year. They just are, because we need to do this. You start cleaning up, instead of the 8.5 minutes, it's 15 minutes. Maybe it's 20 minutes.
I don't know if you guys saw in the chat, Lauren made a really nice suggestion of having people make little pinch pots and fill it with water and then use that
Oh yeah.
with a brush and flip. That's such a fun idea. I didn't know if everybody was reading the chat, but I thought that was pretty cool.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
And if they have their own storage bin, they just keep that in their little bin and it's always there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lauren.
That could be a great first project.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I just wanted to throw this in here as well. I wanted to make sure it was common knowledge for everyone to note. If you are having trouble with sink sharing and you're going to try to use hand sanitizer instead, it is really important to know that hand sanitizers have to be at least 60% alcohol for them to be effective. And this comes right from the CDC website.
I would add to that, because there's been a bunch of recalls on hand sanitizers. So do try and keep up and make sure that the hand sanitizer that you're using is actually safe to use.
If you can find it.
Yeah.
I've been able to find it. They have big ones at Aldi.
Oh yeah, I did get a little one at Aldi today.
You can make it.
Yeah, you could make it.
Yeah.
And you can make it 75% alcohol.
Right, with some aloe.
Do our panelists have anything to say or add as far as health and safety go before we move on to distance learning?
I just wanted to comment about if they're buying our clay. All of our clay has production dates on the side of the box so that they will know when they look at that, when that clay was made and how long it's sat. since it came from our production line. As far as health and safety goes, using, the boxes, that would depend on when they received the shipment, and they'd have to track that a little bit, but at least they could know when it caught off of our production line and when the clay inside was last touched by anyone here. So that is on the side of every box. After the description and the number of our clay, there'll be a date. And if they ever have any questions, they can certainly call here and, ask for Julie, and I can talk to them, or they can shoot me an email. So that's all I have.
I was going to add just briefly, because people were talking about kiln vents and things like that, that I think it doesn't seem like there's a lot of clear answers as far as that goes, but certainly a fan pulling air out is better than one that's like blowing air around in your room. So like, I don't, I certainly wouldn't like go so far as to like say like I have the answer on that, but like I would think it would be better than a fan that's like directed on work, trying to dry stuff out, dry tables and things like that.
Yeah. I saw a question in the chat. Alicia asked about if kids are wearing masks, can they get closer together? Can they gather for cleanup? I think that's really what your admin feels comfortable with. My admin feels comfortable with some things that I'm not comfortable with in my room. I would look over the rules. I know that some schools are saying if the kids are wearing masks, they can sit side by side. Not happening in my room, but I don't know. Yeah.
All right, so if we are ready, the next category of questions was distance learning. We don't have too many questions in here, but some really good resources that we'll share at the end. I just pulled a couple. So how do I teach ceramics online? So really much the two options are to send home clay with kids or have them make clay, or without. So those are kind of the two options. So we have at-home ideas with clay here. There's a nice link here from Amico on how to teach a claymation video project. And then I also really liked this idea of discussing the idea of transients, to make a cup or a vessel out of clay, wait for it to become dry, fill it with water, and then document it as it dissolves. So it's sort of a more conceptual type of an art project. And that one I pulled from a great document that I'll share with you all at the end here. And then Christy, if you want to talk a little bit about this podcast, that was a really good find on your end.
Yeah, there's a really great podcast called We Teach Clay, and I recommend that while you are cleaning your rooms and getting them ready, if in fact you are doing that, plug this in. The episode is, I think it's number 12, Making Kits for At-Home Learning with Biljana Popova. And she talked about making these kits and sending home like 2.5 pounds of clay in the kit. And she talks about doing very basic projects. Like the first project was learning how to roll out a slab of clay. So her toolkit consisted of a paintbrush that the children could use for a rolling pin. So, and then the brush itself was used for the cleaning and things like that. It had a paper clip. It had a popsicle stick and a piece of sandpaper so the kids could file it off and form the tools they wanted. So some of her lessons were just finding things that make marks in your home. So rolling out that slab and learning how to make marks, and then documenting it, and then recycling it. And then the next project would be making stamps and talking about positive and negative stamps and things like that, and then recycling it. And each little project just build on itself. And then of course, built into that is the kid who lets their clay dry out. So they have to learn how to recycle it. So it's a wonderful podcast. I recommend that if you're going to listen to one podcast this summer and you're thinking about clay kits and teaching at home, it's a really good one to listen to.
I was going to bring up our play kit. This is like the Cadillac.
It is.
They're so fancy over there.
So we have been making little like zines that include projects. So we have one on faces, this one's on nature. We had included everything in this kit was like a bag of clay, which is like 25-pound block of clay, a banding wheel. It's kind of nuts how crazy these kits work. A bunch of tools, a bunch of underglazes that were all individually parsed out. But the thing that we did, and it sort of piggybacked on what Christy was talking about with the Tupperware bins for the salad, was we did a Tupperware bin and we poured a little bit of plaster in the bottom of it. And what you can do with that is that kids can put water in that plaster and this becomes a damp box. And with that, these projects can be kept bordering on forever. I've kept teapot parts in one of these boxes for like 10 months before.
Rehydrated projects in those.
Yeah. And then we went to Home Depot and we bought rolling pin, or we bought dowel rods, 2-inch dowel rods, and we just cut them up to make rolling pins that were like significantly cheaper than you can buy them elsewise. Bryce,
you're so smart.
Most of the credit to this kit actually goes to my former colleague, Talon Smith.
Oh,
if
yeah.
anyone knows her, she's intense. And she made these really excellent idea for the kit. But I got to do a lot of the implementation of it. So I got real familiar.
Very cool. Very cool. So ideas with clay, and then we had a couple of ideas for lessons without clay as well. So there's a huge Google Doc. I think I got it from NCECA or Amico. It might have been NCECA, but I put it in the link at the end. And there were some really great ideas to create a paper drinking vessel with like some origami, to do rolled paper pottery. There's that website there has a full step-by-step with pictures, which would be great for kids on how to use an existing bowl to create rolled paper pottery. Then the other idea is more of an activity to cover a plate that you have in your home with paper and practice doing surface design. Another easy one would be to curate a collection of ceramics images that inspire you and to write a description. And then if you see the little names at the end, I just wanted to give credit to the people whose ideas these originally were. You could have the students sketch different vessel shapes and handle designs. You could create a paper lantern that has cutouts like a ceramic lantern would, and you could actually project light from inside of it with the flashlight on your phone. That might require kids to have, an X-Acto knife or something at home, but that's a great idea. And then I found this lesson actually just the other day. I was on the NAEA Collaborate discussion forum. I don't know if you guys are all NAEA members, but there is a fabulous discussion forum called Collaborate, and people are talking about all different types of topics, including, teaching in COVID and ceramics and clay. And a lady posted this lesson that is that little spaghetti strap shirt, and she had all the kids take a paper plate and they had to create a sculpture out of it, but they had to use every single piece. They couldn't waste a single piece of the paper plate, so they had to incorporate all the parts somehow. So, there's so many resources out there. I just kind of picked some of the ones that were my favorite. Do you guys have any other ideas for lessons without clay? I mean, I know that we've all had to do a lot of trial and error from the remote learning last spring.
I think I threw mine away. I just realized that. I cleaned out my space and I think I threw it away, but I love a good cardboard project. Like, it still works with three-dimensional design principles. You can use like duct tape, hot glue, anything like that. Obviously, if you're using hot glue, like, you need enough glue guns for people to not share them. But duct tape is relatively cheap and cardboard is accessible anywhere. But you can still explore some of the three-dimensional sort of space models. So I ended up making like a motorcycle, and I made a guitar and things like that. Air dry clay, paper clay, yeah, for sure.
I just wanted to mention there's a lot of fabulous ideas that are coming along in the chat. Leah and I will go through that chat and maybe we'll put together something to send out based on some of these wonderful ideas, because we really can't go through all of them tonight, but keep them coming. They're wonderful.
And then Bryce, I don't know if you saw in the chat, somebody has asked if you could send a photo of your.
Yeah, I have one on my phone.
Okay.
So I can send that and we can include it with the chat notes.
Okay, or yeah, I could, if you want to email it to me too, I can throw it in the presentation and we can send that out to everybody here tonight.
Great, perfect.
Okay, thank you, that's great.
I'll take this down now. Ooh, it's getting nice and toasty.
All right, so the next question is, if we go distance learning again, is anyone planning to send home air dry clay or paper clay? So that one document I was telling you about, the NCECA document, that's at the end of the presentation, on page 27, they have ideas for teaching clay online. I have it bolded. I have the link bolded at the end as like my favorite resource. So you can check on there.
So I was actually planning on using paper clay in my class for clay, since I'm not going to be able to use my clay room due to the size of it. I have never used it before, so it's going to be an experiment, but I did buy just the individual packets, so each kid would have their own packet opposed to separating it. I mean, it's a little bit more expensive, but for safety reasons, I decided it was more valuable to do that. But like I said, I've never used it before, so it's going to be an experiment for me and for the kids.
We have air dry clay, which can be rehydrated once it's dried out, or it can be fired if later on the kids that are at home can drop their projects off or bring them in somehow, or they can just be used to paint their projects if they're, at home and don't have a way to get things back to the school without breaking them. So our clay is air dry clay that we sell. We do not have paper clay, but I believe you can get that at Michael's or something. Where did you obtain your paper clay from?
Yeah, I just bought it through the catalogs, the art catalogs. I'm not sure if it was United or Blick, because I use a whole bunch of different catalogs, but just through the catalogs that I use when I do my ordering for school.
So the air dry clay is kind of nice if you can fire it at a later date. Most of them can be. You'd have to check with the manufacturer. Ours, you can go to a low fire 04, so they could be glazed if things turn around next semester.
So we were lucky enough to have one of our local art teachers, Amy Rodman. I know some of you PAEA people might know Amy. She was practicing with Crayola brand air dry clay just here recently, and I asked her if she would be willing to put together some pros and cons for that, because I know that that's super readily available. And she grabbed it at Michael's. It was on sale. She had a coupon. She had her teacher discount card. So she was talking about the Crayola brand specifically. She advised that it's pretty delicate, that the coils are still snapping regardless of their thickness, but that it was easy to work with. But you still want to teach all your typical clay joining techniques like slip and score if you're going to teach with this clay body. She said that it took about 3 days for her different vessels to dry. And even though her things held up, she did say that the end product is still pretty fragile, so she would advise using it for more decorative things rather than functional objects. And she was experimenting with different surface designs as well. And she said that the cheap Walmart acrylic paint that come in the little tubes stuck to the surface of this air dry clay, but that the nicer acrylic paint the Walmart ones in the bottle. She said that the nicer acrylic paint in the tube actually peeled off of the surface of this clay body. So that's all I really was able to scrounge up as far as air dry clay goes. All right, anybody else have anything to share with air dry clay or clay at home?
So the only other thing I was going to share, just because I didn't have a picture of it, I sent the pictures I had, is I poured my plaster in my bin to about 1.5 inches. Obviously depends, you know, how deep you want to make it, but around 1.5 inches is like, that's pretty substantial piece of plaster. It shouldn't chip or crack very easily.
Okay. So our last category was logistics. So this is an interesting category, right? Some trickier questions. Should I reduce or eliminate ceramics and change it into a sculpture class?
So, I mean, I'll take that to start with. I think it really depends on your classroom, your comfort level. I know I changed my ceramics class to be called a 3D material class. So I'm going to do the dry, you know, I'm going to do the paper clay, but I'm also going to do other projects around 3D because, you know, doing paper clay the whole time for a semester is not going to be fun. So I really think it's going to depend on your own personal situation and how comfortable you feel. I mean, you might start doing it and realize, you know what, this isn't working for me, and then go and change it to a sculpture class or a 3D class, depending on your needs. Anybody else want to join in?
Yeah, when we had talked about this before, I would hesitate to eliminate a ceramics class because once those things are eliminated, it's very difficult to bring them back. You know, I had given this some thought myself and thought if I really didn't want to do this, I could just ask my administration to pause that program for the year and say, you know, we're just not going to teach that this year, and bring it back at another time. But to eliminate it seems really drastic when it's, you know, we had talked about it. It's a very flexible situation right now. And we don't know. I would hate for anybody to remove a class from, you know, from the list because it was so hard to get it there to begin with.
Right. Yeah, my class is going to stay, but it's going to be an adjacent to it. It's going to be like a 3D material class with it. So
Yeah,
that
my classes
will still be there, but I will have a different class within that class.
Yeah, like mine used to be titled just 3D art, but they were a year-long class, so I could teach whatever I wanted within that. And then my district wanted to go to semester classes, so we changed it to ceramics and sculpture. So I always liked that, just that general 3D category was so nice too, because you could be so flexible.
Yeah,
True.
and I think that's the thing is like all the things that you're doing in a ceramics class, you can translate into other mediums and still talk about the principles of design and art. And I think that's really the important thing. So there's like a lively little discussion happening about carving soap. And I think that's a great solution.
Yeah.
Is, you know, it's cheap, it's easy to carve. You know, you can still talk about that. You can talk about, you know, removing material. You don't get the additive benefits maybe as easily with soap as you would with clay, but certainly the reductive ones you would get.
And your room would smell great.
Yeah.
And their hands would be one step closer to being clean. Great. So the next question is, I want to buy more tools so my students don't have to share. Do you know of a good grant that I could apply for money to get this? So some of the things we talked about were doing homemade tools instead. And then the only grant I'm aware of here in Pennsylvania is the Citizens for the Arts grant. But otherwise, I don't really know of any others.
Yeah.
I know within my organization, we have, we're run as a nonprofit, so we're always applying to grants. That being said, I don't apply to the grants. We have a grant writer that works. But yeah, Donors Choose would be good. I think there's a lot of other potential stuff out there, you know, even talking to like the PTA, you know, and getting involved with them and saying like, hey, we're trying to like raise money for materials fees and things, you know, just to cover things while it's crazy. Might be, I would say no avenues off the top, you know, right now.
And talk to your administrators because they might have a fund that you don't know about. And they might also be able to direct you to somebody who maybe does write grants for the schools.
Great, thank you. The next question is, how do I talk with my administration and or custodial staff about the cleaning of my ceramics room?
Very carefully. get on good terms with your custodial staff.
Yeah. So, the one thing I did want to say, before we all jump in is that it's important to remember, and this comes right from the CDC guidelines, that custodial staff are at an increased risk. Okay, they're at a higher risk of being exposed to the virus, and also toxic effects of any cleaning products that they're using. It's just nice to remind yourself, that as well.
Yeah, they are kind of frontline workers behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we had talked about this, we had talked about just being good communicators with the custodial staff. I know that there are certain things that are the bare minimum in my room, and those things that are the bare minimum are the most important things. So those are the things that when I do have that opportunity to talk to my custodian, and I do have a chance to talk to him, is I just say to him, this is the most important thing that I need you to do. I know you have 4,000 other things to do. Could you please just make sure that this part gets done? And that's wash the floor and wipe the tables. And that helps because they hear me say, I understand you have more than enough to keep you busy all night. And at least they know what the most important thing is that they need to do for us. So like we're being heard with each other. So if you can establish that kind of relationship with your custodian, that would be really, really helpful. And if they aren't cleaning the way you want, find a way to mitigate that and be kind. Like Leah said, remember what their job is compared to yours. They're cleaning toilets and you're not.
And if you have custodians that are from the school, that's great. But if you have outside custodians that come in, you need to speak with your daytime custodian so that they can get the message to the night crew that comes in, because sometimes it's a different company.
Yeah. So a really good question was raised in the chat, and I was actually just thinking about that myself today when I was in my room working on setting up sponges. What about sponges between students for table cleanup?
Paper
I
towels.
saw that question come up.
I was like, oh no.
Yeah, each student should have their own little sponge for working, like cut the little sponges into fours or get a big sponge and cut it into a million pieces, but they shouldn't be sharing a sponge to clean up the table.
No.
It's squirt bottles and paper towels, as much as we are going to deforest the earth this year.
I also
Tile and grout
was thinking
cleanup
of doing-
sponges. You can get them in big packs. I would just, as you give the kid a little sponge, I would give him a big sponge too and be like, this is your sponge.
Ah,
Write your name on it with a Sharpie.
you could cut that in half and 2 kids could clean up their area with it.
Yeah, yeah.
I was gonna do microfiber towels and then just throw them in a clothes basket and have them washed. Because luckily I do have a very good relationship with my custodian, and that's something she has already expressed to me that she would be willing to do.
Nice.
Yeah, she's the bee's knees. All right, our next question is, how can you ease the worries of students who are already anxious about germs, even pre-COVID?
So I work in a school where basically all my kids are. It's a school with special needs. And so one of the things that you can do for the kids that are extremely anxious about clay, you can let them use gloves, because I do have some students that do that anyway during the year, where they can use a pair of gloves if they don't want to touch the clay. But the other thing too, to be aware is that maybe they can do other projects, getting ready to do clay at some other point. Maybe they're going to do the same kind of designs and thumbnails that the rest of the kids are going to do for a project, but they're going to make it out of different material, whether it be cardboard or wire or whatever else material, what other kind of materials you might have in your classroom for them to use, and just express them that it's okay. Don't make them feel bad about that they're concerned about the situation, and just express to them that you're there to keep them safe, and that they are safe, and just keep reassuring them that it's okay. Maybe You know, that's one way of working with it, to have different things for them. Or, you know, if it's a kid that doesn't want to do dimensional fit projects, you can have them do the same project someone's doing in clay, but do it as a 2D project. Maybe, you know, have different materials to use. Maybe it would be a collage material, maybe it would be a painting, and then just space them away from where the kids are doing the clay. But the most important thing is just to really reassure them that everything is going to be okay and that you're there to keep them safe. So they know that. And that is one of the most important things. And sometimes if it's so bad, then to speak with your administrator to have them move into a different class, because it's not worth to get them so anxious about it that they're not going to start coming to school. So those are a couple tips on that.
Thanks,
I
Linda.
think in addition to that, like talking, you know, being real honest about sort of where they are and where you are. Like, I know I've been particularly nervous about it because I'm not so much nervous for myself as I am nervous about like getting my parents sick and worrying about like if I accidentally transmit this to someone else. I think that the thing that we all have to sort of work through and acknowledge is that, like, man, we're just living in a really unique time and a really that we're all trying to do our best to like work through these things as we come through them, and say, like, you know, we're all in this together, you know, that like we're all trying to like work through this together. So like if you're feeling anxious, I'm probably feeling anxious too. So like I will try to give you the benefit of the doubt, and hopefully that works vice versa.
Yeah, that's good.
Great, thank you. What do I do if my administration approaches me about eliminating my ceramics program?
I guess I thought that slide I talked about was this one, but about asking your administrators to think about pausing it. You know, because like I said before, it's really difficult to get programs to come back. And if they eliminate it and they, you know, cart all your materials off, you're never going to get them back. I think pausing is a good thing, you know, and again, saying to your administration, this is a fluid situation. We don't know what next year is going to be.
And I would remind them about their investment that they've already put into it. That, you know, to say like, hey, you've already invested in all this equipment and tools, all this stuff. If you get rid of it and then we decide to bring it back later, then you've got to rebuy all this stuff. So, you know, I think you could talk about sort of sunk cost stuff with them.
Right. This is a good one. Who washes your aprons and rags? Will you allow students to share them from period to period?
For me, it's me. I do it.
Me too.
From like class to class, our washer and dryer is not fast enough to get them from one to the other. So we have to have enough that we're never in a situation where they're using the same one. We might be able to, you know, run the washer like 2 times a day. So, you know, we might be able to get through one cycle and have those back out. But yeah, it's typically ends up being staff that washes it on our end.
Julie, did you have, at Standard, are there disposable aprons that people can buy?
We tried to find that site that I had those disposable available, which I don't have right now, but they can call, because I have somebody looking into it as far as, you know, how many we will have available and what the cost will be, but I didn't have it at this time, so I apologize for that. But they'd be nice and thin, so you could use them once and throw them away. I believe they used to come in a pack of 100 at a time, which would maybe be too costly, because, you know, using the cloth ones and washing them all the time would definitely be more cost effective. But yes, we had available some very thin white aprons that the kids could easily put on and then throw them away after they were using them. They would have to probably call our store right now to get an updated price on that, but I don't have one right now.
I think the t-shirt idea was a great idea, that big t-shirt, and just slice it up the back and use that as a smock.
Yeah. I've taken garbage bags apart, and cut holes in them for kids that really, really want an apron. Garbage bags are really fun to cut and take apart. So that could be a project in itself, as a fashion statement kind of thing, and get out the colored masking tape and let them go to town on it.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
So we only have a few questions left. Classroom setup with social distancing. My room is small, but I only have 12 students. Still, students are pretty tight together at the tables. I'm wondering if I need to have half do wheels and half work at the tables, but it would be extremely difficult to teach two separate processes simultaneously.
Well, I think first you need to find out what your school is doing. I know in our school, they're only permitting a certain number of kids in classrooms. So that would be the first step to do, because you might not have 12 kids in your room if your room is small. That's the first thing you need to do. And I'm just real concerned about using wheels. Because clay also, I know my kids, they're a mess, clay splatters and things like that, and clean up and everything. My thing is not to use clay until maybe, to use the wheels until maybe January, and see how things, if anything changes, and just do hand building.
Yeah. I mean, as far as social distancing goes, one of the resources I found online was from Port Chester, New York, from the Clay Art Center. And one of the recommendations they made that I didn't even think to expressly say to my students that I will now is to remind students and faculty that they should not be moving the wheels, they should not be moving the desks, and they should not be moving the chairs other than to sit down. And that will help ensure some social distancing. It's little things like that that I wouldn't have even thought of, had I not read it somewhere else.
I know we've, in previous studios, we've stacked the wheels up on top of each other and just shoved them in a corner when we need the extra space. In terms of running two classes, I think the way I've done that in the past is I've just, done a dedicated demonstration and been like, you're gonna have to remember for next time, if you're on the wheel, like you're not gonna get that individual attention, like we're gonna talk about the wheel one day, we're gonna talk about hand building the next. And so like whoever's getting that attention, the other one's not. And they just have to know ahead of time, that's the sort of structure that you're gonna do.
Yeah. So I've always actually taught two projects at once because I only have 6 wheels in my room. So a solution that you could consider if you wanted to try is I just teach choice-based projects where there's a really loose prompt and then they come up with their design concept, and then through individual consultations with the student, I'm able to best direct them. And you know how we teachers do, we guide them to what technique would be best for that project that they have proposed. So I'm usually able to balance it out pretty well, kind of pushing half the kids to go towards wheels, pushing, some of the kids to go towards hand building. And if a lot do fall, into the wheel category, just a system where they rotate is a good idea. But usually I'm able to kind of guide them in a different direction so that we have a better balance for each project.
Yeah, I've done it where I will put the kids who are going to go on the wheel, they get a day of watching videos while I introduce the hand building lesson, and get the hand builder started. And it's, like 2 days on, 2 days off, 2 days on. And then once I see that everybody's established, then I can just float back and forth, or I can say, everybody help each other kind of thing. It's exhausting and time consuming, but you can do it. If you really want to do it, you can teach 2 lessons at the same time. You're a pro.
Right. All right, guys, believe it or not, we made it to the end. So here are some of the resources that we used. You guys don't have to write all this down. I will email these things out to you. And, like we said, we'll be able to get this video recording up on the PAEA website here within the near future. Give us some time to edit and upload and do all that stuff. Here are some more resources. This one that's bolded, this one was from NCECA. This one, it's like over 30 pages long of project prompt ideas. It is fantastic. It's for clay at home, no clay at home, really, really great resources there. This is also the Amico image that I told you that came out in July, that we were pulling some information from. The other resources that some people sent to me or that I kind of saw during my research, but I didn't really thoroughly have a look at, these are some other ones that looked good, that I just didn't really have a chance to, you know, really go through super thoroughly. And then if you want to contact any of us, you'll have our contact information here as well. I just wanted, before we open it up for questions for the last 10 minutes, I just wanted to thank our panelists for their time and for sharing their expertise in joining us this evening. Those of you that maybe jumped on late, just please make sure that you put your name in the chat, the name that you registered with on Eventbrite. That way we're able to use it for attendance to send you your professional development credit opportunity after the event. So PA teachers, you will be sent a Google form for your Act 48 credit. Non-PA teachers, you can request a certificate of participation through that email. If you just respond to it, our Director of Programming, fabulous Jill Anders, will send you a certificate of participation. And then, like I said before, the details on the release of tonight's video recording will be forthcoming.
Leah, I just wanted to mention something. Kimberly had put something into the chat asking that maybe we can have a little bit of a discussion as to why ceramics is important in education, since there's so many people on that, that are ceramic teachers, so we can have a common voice and language for teachers to take back to their admin in case there is some questions about the program being taken away this school year due to budgets. So maybe we can have an open discussion. People can, you know, add some tidbits to that, and maybe we can come up with an idea that we can use. So if anybody would like to, what's the best way we should do this? Raise your hand, or, you know, use the little icon for the hand and unmute.
I think, what about putting questions into the chat?
Just putting in the chat?
Yeah.
Yeah, I apologize. I wasn't able to look at the chat the whole time. So if you really have a pressing question that we missed, I sincerely apologize. If you just want to shoot that in the chat, that would be excellent.
So if anybody has any ideas for what I just talked about with coming up with some type of a conversation for admins, just add it in there, and Leah and I will do some editing and we'll send information out. That'll probably be the best thing. And if we can't get to all your questions, which is a good possibility, it's not going to happen, again, we will go through everything and the 5 of us will try to put something together to send out. So
Linda,
yes.
before you jump into that, because I'm getting so many questions about Act 48 and professional development credit, can I just address that quickly? And that way people have time to put some things in the chat for questions for you.
That works.
As far as your professional development credit, anyone who signs in on the chat roll with their first and last name so that I can check you off the list will receive the email to get your professional development credit. There will be 2 separate links in that email and directions. So if you are a PAE or a Pennsylvania teacher, we can upload your Act 48 for you directly to PDE. If you are not a Pennsylvania teacher, there will be another link in that email that you will be able to use to submit your name to me, and then I will return a certificate of participation to you, okay? But if you want to get that email to get the professional development credit, please make sure you sign in with your first and last name so I can get you checked off. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill.
There are so many good comments on here. I don't think
I know, I'm so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as like advocating for clay, just in terms of like as a material, I think I would talk a lot about just, you know, that it's you know, especially now that like so much stuff is happening via Zoom and everything is happening digitally, this is a good counterpoint, I think, to sort of like reminding people that we do live in a physical world, and that it's really important that people have an opportunity to interact with that in a real way, in a tangible way. And I think there are a lot of good stuff out there in terms of like articles that you can start looking towards. I don't have anything like on me about, you know, sort of like why clay is important, but I think if you start searching, you'll find there's a huge library of articles written about sort of what clay does for folks.
Yeah, I think right now in this time, we're so tactily deprived that we need it even more. But I know that an administrator would just look at me and roll his eyes.
There was a question by L. Spencer that I didn't want to skip over because we didn't talk about this at all. And I don't do dip glazing at my school because I don't have a way to store it, but that was a great question. L. Spencer asked if we were still able to do dip glazing. I don't know if you're on here still, L. Spencer, if you want to talk more about that, or if any of our panelists want to speak to that.
You want to talk about it, Bryce? I think it depends on your classroom. You know, if you have a crazy classroom, I'd say no. If you have a more controlled, laid back kind of classroom and you have dipping tongs and no one's putting their hands in those containers, and that's the problem, is their hands going in. But if you've got a drill and a paddle attachment for your drill that you can mix them up, and the kids are using the dipping tongs and dipping their pieces in, theoretically it can be done. It's just a matter it's a matter of keeping their hands out of it.
Yeah. And I think like you could do that, or you could do like pour glazing, like for like if they want like, you know, patterns, you could do like pour a little bit, like a little cup, things like that keep your hands out of it. Most kids don't want to get their hands, I feel like, in the glaze anyway. Not most of my kids anyway.
We're getting some really good information here also about speaking with administrators. So keep it coming if you have any more suggestions, and we will put something together.
Yeah, I really like the advocacy pieces that people are dropping in the chat. If you all would find it helpful, I'd like to maybe compile that in a document and send that out if you find that you are facing these conversations with your administration. Great. Are there any other remaining questions? If you want to throw that in the chat, if you want to unmute and throw it out there, we still have just a couple of minutes, but like I said, I'd like to be respectful of everybody's time.
And if you're just a little plug, if you're from PA and you are not a member of PAEA at this time, or if you're an art teacher in another state, join. It's a great organization. National is wonderful as well. A lot of information, a lot of webinars you can do that are free if you are a member. So just throwing out a little plug there.
Great. All right, panelists, any final words?
One of the, you know, I'll plug one thing about distance learning. If you are doing distance learning, is we got a big roll of like crappy canvas material and cut it up and included that in the kits. Most kids do not have a canvas table or something like that to work on, so giving them something so that their clay doesn't stick to their tables at home. I forgot to mention that was part of the kit.
There's just one other question here that maybe we should address. How long should we wait before touching kids' work if we send it home and they send it back?
I've been waiting 48 hours, but I know, you know, like, honestly, I would wait even longer. Right? Like, wear gloves, possibly.
Or wear gloves,
Yeah, I mean, if you're wearing gloves and then putting it into the kiln, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for coming. It's really impressive to see people from all over the United States. We even had somebody email from Australia. So we've we've reached a lot of people through this presentation, and it's really, you know, it's a testament to the work that we do as art educators and ceramic educators. You know, we all have great passion for the subject that we teach and the kids that we serve. And you know, I know I was feeling extremely stressed about clay specifically. And so I'm just really thankful to our panelists for, you know, being willing to participate in this, because I know just from the responses, you know, around this event that this was a really touchy subject for people. So we're hoping that we were able to share some resources with you that you may have already known, maybe you didn't know, and some things that you can apply to your classrooms for this coming school year.
Thanks for organizing this. This was a great, great event. And just the fact that people want to get together and do it again is just a testament to what MindThink is really good for.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
appreciate
If anybody ever has any questions on materials, they can always email me and get in touch with me that way. But it was a pleasure, and it was nice to see so many participants, and it was great.
Thank you, everybody, and have a good evening and stay safe.
Have a great school year.
All right. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Right.